Yo, what is up everybody, it's Jelly and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we are reacting to an extremely intriguing and exciting video by the great Swagkage. And as you can tell by the title, that is Explaining Baryon Mode. So folks, I'm sure you guys, just like me, are very excited that Swag finally dropped a video related to Boruto, right? And what better video to do than explaining the almighty and the all-powerful Baryon Mode. Alright, so first of all, I want to say the animators / writers of the manga did a spectacular job displaying this mode that Naruto had in his tool belt that he didn't know about, right? I believe in the anime in particular, the sequence of events that transpired were phenomenal. And I'm saying phenomenal. That part was that good in Boruto. I know there's a lot of Boruto haters, but that part makes the show worth it. It was spectacular. It was phenomenal. You know, the sequence of events, the battle that ensued between Naruto and Ishiki Otsutsuki, who was bodying Sasuke and Naruto for the longest time, was spectacular. It was so satisfactory to see Naruto finally establish some dominance against an opponent once again, just like he used to back in the day in Naruto Shippuden. So when he awakened that mode, it really brought great feelings. It brought hype. It brought the thrill that we were all waiting for, right? And he not only went toe to toe with Ishiki Otsutsuki, he bodied Ishiki Otsutsuki. So from that, we can easily narratively imply that Naruto in Baryon mode is perhaps the strongest single organism / shinobi ever in the entire Naruto history, right? So I'm very intrigued to see what Swag has to say about this one. But before we begin, any loves really appreciate it. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay updated with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy and you mess with the kid, man, make sure to hit that sub button because I want you to become part of the family forever. Let's not waste any more time, screen. See what Swag has to say about this one.
Hey, how's it going everybody? Swagkage here, and today we're actually going to be talking about Boruto for a change. I know I've been avoiding the series for what feels like forever at this point, but I finally read the manga, and I have to say, I enjoyed the series a lot more than I expected to. Certainly more than I enjoyed the first 30-ish episodes of the anime. I'm not going to give a detailed account of how I feel about the series here, since I think that's better saved for another video, maybe multiple videos. But suffice it to say, if you haven't checked out the manga yet, I definitely recommend it. And you guys can also expect more Boruto videos on this channel in the near future. Alright. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at what's arguably the biggest development in the series up to this point, and that's Naruto's new form called Baryon mode. There's a decent bit of information to go over for sure, but I imagine what the majority of you are most interested in is how powerful this form is. I'll give a more detailed answer in a little bit, but to start, this is obviously Naruto's most powerful transformation. Now this probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. I'm sure those of you who haven't even read or watched Boruto yet saw that answer coming from a mile away. But I'm also willing to say that it's not just Naruto's strongest form, rather it's the strongest power-up in the whole series. Really, the only one that I can say in good faith rivals it is the power-up that gave Kakashi both of Obito's Sharingan. But even compared to that, I think Baryon mode is still a way bigger jump. Now, before we get into any more specifics, like I was saying earlier, even though I'm really late, I'm glad that I finally caught up on the Boruto manga. So like I was saying earlier, Baryon mode is obviously a massive power-up, but that's a little self-evident. Most of you probably already knew that. The real question is, what does that mean in more precise terms? We aren't given an exact numerical value like we are with Choji's Red Jawbreaker, or even a rough numerical value like we are with the 8 Gates, but the series provides more than enough statements and context to make a ballpark estimate feasible. Let's start with our biggest and most obvious clue, Naruto's fight against Ishiki. By just watching or reading the fight, it's pretty easy to gather that Naruto is the stronger of the two here once he's transformed. This is clearly demonstrated to us through the fight itself and stated or implied by multiple characters present there. In the anime, the gap between them is a lot more apparent and it's quite a bit more significant, but the difference is definitely still there in the manga. Regardless of the source we look at, Naruto is stronger than Ishiki, and by a notable, albeit unquantifiable amount. It's admittedly pretty hard to say exactly how much stronger Naruto is, but the difference is substantial enough that it becomes apparent apparent to both Sasuke and Kurama that Naruto's winning pretty quickly. Speaking of Sasuke, his statements make it pretty clear that Baryon mode Naruto severely outclasses him, and I think there's one in particular that quite effectively illustrates the gap between them. About halfway through the fight, Naruto easily intercepts some high-speed projectiles shot at him by Ishiki, and it's at this point that Sasuke thinks to himself that he can barely keep track of these projectiles with his Sharingan. Ishiki himself even seems surprised by this, so it's fair to assume that he probably wasn't holding back. More importantly though, Sasuke's statement here tells us that Naruto is massively faster than he is, despite the fact that up until this point in the series, the two of them have been implied to be rivals. One is likely stronger than the other, but I think most of us can agree that they were at least relative to one another. And I can't overstate how enormous the implied speed difference is here. Sasuke's rarely put in a position where he struggles to follow his opponent's movements with his eyes. Even against people who are significantly faster than him, like Killer B, Raikage A, Ten Tails Obito, and Kaguya, he was still able to keep track of them as they moved around the battlefield. In the fight against B, Sasuke actually mentions that it's particularly easy for him to track linear movements with his Sharingan, and since Ishiki throws his rods in a straight line, this should apply to them too. This makes it even more impressive that in Sasuke's own words, he was barely able to keep track of these rods, and keep in mind, this statement wasn't actually about Naruto, it was about the rods which Naruto caught without any trouble at all. So to lay this out in a way that might be a bit more digestible, let's connect all the dots here.
This Naruto. This Ishiki's rods.
Oh, then there.
Sasuke.
I'm getting there.
Ishiki. Sasuke's Sharingan.
There's
Jigen.
And then there's
Sasuke.
That's messed up.
Speaking of Jigen, he's actually a pretty good point of reference for determining how much stronger Naruto got when he entered Baryon mode. As most of you probably remember, Naruto and Sasuke didn't just struggle against Ishiki, they also had a hard time in their fight against Jigen. Though it would probably be more accurate to say that Jigen soundly defeated both of them. Saying they had a hard time is putting it pretty lightly. Relatively speaking, the gap in power between Jigen and Naruto and Sasuke was at least as big as it was when their war art counterparts fought Kaguya. They definitely didn't struggle like they did against Jigen when they fought Madara or even Ten Tails Obito. At least not when they started fighting Obito with the majestic attire Susanoo anyway. But comparisons aside, the point is that Jigen was totally out of their league, on a different level than both of them. I've seen a lot of people claim that Naruto and Sasuke were sort of relative to him, that they were kinda keeping up with him, but I just don't agree, and I actually think that my stance that they were severely outclassed is supported by multiple statements in the manga. Kashin Koji considers Naruto defeating Jigen an outright impossibility and thinks that Sasuke teaming up with him would barely improve his chances. Sasuke himself tells Boruto that he and Naruto couldn't even make it then against Jigen, and if you take these statements seriously, they frame Jigen as somebody who, like I was saying, is at a totally different level of power than Naruto and Sasuke.
Fair enough, I agree.
Establishing all of this is important because obviously Ishiki is much more powerful than Jigen is, and I think that the difference between the two of them shouldn't be understated either. Before we ever actually see Ishiki in the flesh, Amado talks about him like his power dwarfs that of the Ishiki-controlled Jigen. And this is supported when Kashin Koji fights Ishiki and describes his power as being on a completely different level than it was when he was Jigen. So if we take these statements from Kashin Koji and Amado seriously, then we can easily place Ishiki like at least 2 whole tiers of power above Naruto and Sasuke. If you don't want to take their word for it, it's still clearly implied by multiple statements from other characters that Ishiki is significantly more powerful than...
Alright, so we're about past halfway through this video. I definitely got my 2 cents so far. Now, I agree with Swag's premises. I believe he is, proving those pretty well, in my opinion. And I like to say this. Jigen, against Naruto and Sasuke, right, when they had their battle, beat them handedly, right? He didn't have the ability to one-shot them, so to speak, right? But he beat them handedly. They went all out, right? Naruto with his Kurama avatar and Sasuke with his perfect Susanoo, right? They went all out. They went all out, and they still fell short. While Jigen had them where he wanted them, right? And the only reason he didn't finish them off, so to speak, is because the vessel, which was Jigen, right, the body itself, was beginning to fail. So that's why he failed to eliminate them for good. Now, I'm going to say this about Ishiki. All right, so now we're talking about Ishiki, the actual entity that was inside Jigen that is now outside of Jigen and is exposed to the elements. He was so much more powerful than Naruto and Sasuke. Way more powerful. I would even argue he has the ability to one-shot both. In a way, he kind of did before Naruto awakened Baryon mode. You can argue that he one-shotted both with no difficulty. basically. Very little to none. That implies that they are basically fodder compared to him. I don't want to say complete fodder, no disrespect to Naruto and Sasuke, but Ishiki is in a whole different league. He's in a completely different power scaling. He's on a completely different level of power scaling. He's way up here. Way fucking up here. So I would argue he was much, much more powerful than them as Ishiki, right? When he was exposed to the elements. But then Naruto gets just tremendous boost in power that is truly astronomical. It is unquantifiable. There is no legit numerical or quantitative number, right? There is no numerical value to put on this boost in power from Naruto with Baryon mode. However, there is qualitative data to show that he got astronomically times more powerful. Like, it was a tremendous boost. He went from being one-shotted by this guy to dominating this guy. So just let that sink in. Let that sink in. Sasuke had his jaw dropped, saying that not even his perfect Sharingan, which is probably the best Sharingan in the show, couldn't keep up with the rods that were giving him and Naruto trouble prior. Yet Naruto was able to catch it before it hits him and break it like it was nothing. Let that sink in. The power scaling, right? The increase in power that transpired when he awakened that new mode is astronomical. It's not just significant, it is tremendous. Sasuke used the perfect word when he was describing Naruto's newfound power. It was tremendous. Tremendous. And I am so, so glad that the writers allowed this to happen, because Naruto deserved that moment. But let's continue. So far, it's a great video.
Jigen was, and Kurama even describes Ishiki's power as otherworldly. And like I mentioned earlier, Naruto wasn't just matching Ishiki in Baryon mode. The two of them weren't even. Naruto was stronger than him and he was winning the fight. The fight was so one-sided that you might be able to argue that the same way I said Jigen was a tier above Naruto and Sasuke and Ishiki was a tier above that Baryon mode Naruto might be a tier above Ishiki in power. Though of course that's a little hard to say for sure, especially considering the form's very strict time limit. Regardless of if you believe it's that strong or not, it's clear that Baryon mode propelled Naruto into a whole new realm of power. The jump from 6-path Sage mode to Baryon mode was almost, if not just as massive as the jump from KCM2 to 6-path Sage mode was. I mentioned the form's time limit just a second ago, by the way, and I think that now would be a good time to segue into its finer mechanics and how it works rather than just how strong it is. I'll start with something that isn't expressly stated, and that's the form's namesake. So in real-world physics, baryons are a type of subatomic particle distinguished by the fact that they all have an odd number of quarks. Since they're a subclass of hadron particles, and all hadron particles have at least 2 quarks, that means all baryons have to have at least 3, which makes them particularly heavy. The baryon particle isn't just a subclass of the hadron particle though. It is also a subclass of the fermion particle. Picture a Venn diagram in your head, and at the overlap between hadrons and fermions exists baryon particles.
Right.
The most famous kind of baryon particles are protons, which carry a positive charge, and neutrons, which don't carry any charge. Protons and neutrons colliding and combining together is also the basis for any nuclear fusion reaction, the process that powers many nuclear reactors and also produces the energy released by the sun. Now the reason all the chemistry talk is relevant is because Kurama actually directly compares baryon mode to the process of nuclear fusion, and even mentions the sun specifically, which might give you an idea of why the form is so powerful. Maintaining baryon mode consumes a massive amount of chakra, but it converts this chakra into a unique energy source and seems to release a greater quantity of this energy than the equivalent of chakra that it consumes. Much like nuclear fusion, the energy produced by baryon mode, or in more practical terms, the power provided to the user by baryon mode, is otherworldly, vastly greater than the power provided by any other transformations we've seen up to this point. The form seems to be unique to the Nine Tails and its Jinchuriki, but due to the immense chakra it consumes, using the form just a single time will lead to Kurama's death. According to Kurama though, because the form rapidly eats away at his life force and all chakra is connected, coming into contact with anyone using the form will result in one's own life force being shaved away as well. Now just to be clear, this is not the only way that a user of baryon mode can deal damage. Naruto's punches were amped significantly. It's just that because of the form's extremely strict time limit, he wasn't able to maintain it for long enough to do enough damage to Ishiki to kill him. It was thanks to this life force shaving thing that he was able to beat Ishiki at all, since Kurama seems to be of the opinion that if that weren't a factor, Ishiki would simply outlast Naruto and kill him. Now I gotta say, Baryon mode's time limit is incredibly brief. This power-up is about as short-lived as DMS Kakashi's was, but considering the insane power it provides to its user, it's hard to imagine even this being an issue in most circumstances. Anyway, since using this form caused Naruto to lose Kurama, I'm actually pretty interested in making a video about how strong Naruto and Sasuke are without their power-ups.
I would love to see that. I hope Swag does that very soon. We will definitely be checking that out.
If you guys are interested, let me know.
Great video,
Swag.
Swag.
I think I've said everything I feel I need to have said about Baryon mode, so as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care. Swagkage
Peace out, Swag.
Bye.
Great video. Alright folks, there you guys have it. That was explaining Baryon mode. Alright, so I like this sort of theme the writers had in mind when creating this mode, right? They were obviously having this sort of sun reference, right? Because the sun, in a way, is like a nuclear reactor. And this is another reference I want to make to compare to Baryon mode. It's more of a geological reference, more so. Earthquakes, right? Earthquakes emit this ridiculous, astronomical amounts of power, but yet it is extremely short-lasting, right? Earthquakes last anywhere from like 30 seconds to a couple minutes. So that is kind of the case with Baryon mode. It is such a powerful ability, which results in a very small time frame for it to be used, right? And I like that idea. I like that idea. The idea of tremendous power being short-lived, right? Even in nature, things that emit ridiculous amounts of power are short-lived. So I liked everything about this mode. I liked the way it was displayed on paper and on the anime on the big screen. It was done very, very well. And as far as the narrative, it was beautifully executed. It was beautifully executed. I'm very glad that this got to take place in the manga and in the anime, and they did Naruto justice, all right? Because I'm sure you can all agree, Naruto and Sasuke were getting fucked up for a long time. You know, Jigen whipped their ass, Ishiki whipped their ass, and the writer said, okay, it's time to give Naruto the credit he deserves and let all the hard work he's put in bear the fruit of his labor, right? They wanted Naruto to bear the fruit of his labor, and that's exactly what happened, right? We saw a beautiful moment transpire before our very eyes. We saw him dominate a God-level threat, and I think God is an understatement as far as Naruto is concerned, right? So I'm just very, very pleased by the results and the outcomes of the storyline, of Baryon mode, of it all. Obviously, the tremendous tragedy that ensued afterward hurt with Kurama's death. RIP to Kurama, man. He did what had to be done, and I think it speaks volumes to the kind of character he developed being around Naruto for many, many years, for decades, right? I love how the writers let Kurama become Naruto. He became selfless, he became loving, he became compassionate. And because of that, he was willing to sacrifice his life for Naruto, for Sasuke, for the goddamn world, for the Shinobi verse at large. Because if they wouldn't have defeated Ishiki, it would have been over for the Shinobi verse. He probably would have slayed everybody, every nation, all 5 nations, all smaller nations, the Shinobi verse at large. So the stakes were so high. And Kurama knew that. So he told himself, you know what? I gotta make the big play. This is the 9th inning, and I gotta do what has to be done to win the day, to win the battle, to save the world. And that's exactly what he did. And that's a beautiful thing, man. That's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad the writers gave Kurama a good ending. It was really spectacular, and I'm gonna be honest. Now, I would have been heartbroken, even more so than I already am, but I wouldn't have minded if Naruto died there. I wouldn't have minded it, because he did what he had to do. He defeated the highest level of threat that there is, Ishiki Otsutsuki. You know, and I would not have minded him dying there. It would have hurt even more than it already has, right, with Kurama dying, but it would have been a very honorable and respectable way to go out. You know, I would not have minded it at all. It would have been spectacular. But all in all, folks, Baryon mode is an extremely powerful boost in power. And I do agree with Swag. It is probably the biggest boost in power we have ever seen in the Naruto verse. Bigger than the 8th Gaze power up, bigger than Kakashi's DMS boost in power, bigger than when Naruto and Sasuke got 6 path powers. It was a tremendous boost. So as far as Naruto goes, I hope that he does go out good. I hope that they give him an honorable death. You know, there is some theories going around Naruto, right, as far as how powerful he's going to be now that Kurama is no longer with us. There is the theory that technically he has the other tailed beast inside of him, right? There is a theory that Kurama, in a way, is energy, is nature, so somehow he could be resurrected. I don't know. There's a lot of theories going around, so let me know what you think about that. And as far as the anime, I'm very, very curious to see where it's going to go from here, right? As far as the manga, I am reading it, right? I kind of want to stay with the anime. I'm more of a visual person, so to speak. But it's going very well. It is progressing in a very, very good way. I'm very pleased by how Boruto's been going lately. And I see that Swag and Seth and all those guys are really starting to appreciate Boruto now, because Boruto is trying to pick it up. They're starting to pick up the pace. They're starting to put in that suspense, that thrill, and that hype that we miss so dearly. You know, we miss that hype. We miss all the greatness of Naruto. And we didn't have that for a long time, right? There is the flaws within the Boruto storyline, but, you know, every show has its flaws. There is something called romanticizing the past. So maybe we should ask ourselves, are we romanticizing the past and not giving Boruto a fair shake? Maybe that's what Swag and Seth and Clyde and all these guys thought when they started giving Boruto a fair shake. And even me, all of us, I'm sure all of us, have been perpetrators of this trend, right? Because we love Naruto, man. He's that guy. And the anime and the manga, it's goated. There is no question about it. So maybe we've been romanticizing it too long, and now it's time to give Boruto its time to shine. You know what I'm saying? It's time to give it time to shine. And despite the shitty beginning of Boruto, which that's what it was, right? It was pretty bad at first. It is now heating up. It is now becoming something great. Now, will it ever be Naruto? Honestly, it would be a very, very tough thing for it to become that, right? It'd be very, very difficult for it to ever reach that kind of greatness. There's not many animes in the history of anime that has reached that level of greatness. There are very few. Very few. I'm sure you can probably only list it on one hand. You know, for some of you guys, that's all opinionated, of course, but as far as that level of greatness, it's going to be hard to reach that. You know, it's going to be hard to reach that. I think the writers should really try to develop Boruto and Sarada and Mitsuki and all those guys and really have us connect to them on an emotional level. If they could do that, have the stakes be so high to where we're like, oh, damn, what's going to happen next? Maybe they have something here. The next great anime. Maybe there's a possibility. That's a big if. You know, it's a big if, and it's hard to ride the coattails of such a great anime. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult. Dragon Ball Super, Boruto, all these new shows that are off the coattails of the old. Even non-animes like Avatar, right? With Korra, I should say. Like those kind of shows, all those new shows. It's hard to ride on the coattails of such greatness. That's just hard to do. It's hard to replicate what once was. But we'll see. We'll see, folks. I can talk all day. I don't want to keep ranting. But yeah, this was a very good video. Baryon mode is goated. There's no question about it. That fight with Ishiki is goated. There's nothing you can say about it with whether you hate Boruto or not. It's goated, man. Simple as that. And I'm very pleased with where we're headed. And RP to Kurama, man. I'm going to say it one more time. RP to Kurama. And let's see where we go from here. But I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Let me know your thoughts on Baryon mode and on Boruto in general. What do you think about it? What do you think about where it's going to go next? But if you guys have any other recommendations, please let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is Jay the Great signing out. Peace.